the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
It was so good yesterday. The public has demanded more.
Demand me, public.
The public went on Twitter and said, "We want Marcus."
And we must give the people what they want.
It's the good news. The good news is we have Marcus. The bad news is we ran out of money. He can only stick around for about an hour.
Hey, it takes the chips, baby. It takes the chips to feed the bear.
Marcus does have a plane, has to get back and work a few odd jobs to.
Yep, provide for my family. A couple fence post holes to dig and change a few tires and change a couple people's oil, and I should make it to next week.
You should. But Marcus will be here for a little while. We have a pretty big show on tap, some pretty phenomenal guests. We'll start with Jeremy Foley, the athletic director at the University of Florida, just let go Will Muschamp after a year after sticking with him. Another AD who knows a little bit about all that is Jay Jacobs. He'll join us to talk about the tragedy at Auburn this week, also the hiring of Coach Muschamp. About an hour away from Urban Meyer, our buddy Tim Tebow left us and spoke to the Ohio State team. I hope that word doesn't circulate down in Tuscaloosa.
Oh, man. What?
Saban wants you speaking to the team.
Yeah.
We'll take your phone calls. A lot of guests, including Marcus Spears here in the first part of the program, and we begin the show by welcoming in the athletic director at the University of Florida, Jeremy Foley. Jeremy, hope all is well, and Merry Christmas. And I know it's been a long year for you, but I bet you're looking forward to a little bit of a break.
Yeah, we'll get a little break, Paul. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Marcus, how are you today?
How are you, Jeremy? Good to hear from you, man.
I'm good. Good to hear from you guys. Thanks for having me.
We, Marcus and I and Tim and Joe sat together in Atlanta watching your introduction of Jim McElwain nearly 2 weeks ago, and from our vantage point, it looked like it was extremely well received. Talk a little bit about how it's gone so far.
Well, Paul, it's really gone very well. As you said, it's been a difficult fall on a lot of different levels, obviously very difficult because of our relationship with Will and certainly his efforts here for 4 years. And, you and I talked this past summer, I felt about Will and certainly, the hopes that we had for, the upcoming season that didn't work out. So, we had a tough call to make and then began the process and feel very blessed that, we were able to get Jim to come to Gainesville. Certainly his, the way he is, who he is, and, his success at Alabama, the job he did at Colorado State. I think our fan base has been energized by him. He's he's a good guy. Number one, number two, he's easy to talk to. I think he's confident. And, we're very excited. So it's gone well. Certainly anytime you have a coaching transition, there's a lot of work to do. Putting staffs together, and certainly, right now we have a current staff in place as we get ready to play a bowl game. So there's a lot of different moving parts right here, and a lot more things will come into focus, in the beginning of the year. But, right now we are moving in a very positive direction, and, obviously very excited.
Yeah, Jeremy, Marcus here. When you were making this decision, I know the times of SEC is to win now, and fans' expectation to have a program resurge after maybe a down year. When you thought about hiring Jim, what were the key components early on? Because you made the statement that you wanted to get this done before the bowl game. Was recruiting a big factor in that, or was it just getting them in and getting them acclimated to the Gator Nation?
Well, one thing that, making the decision when we did after the South Carolina game and Will agreeing to coach for 2 more weeks, it gave us time to vet a lot of different coaches. We made the statement during the press conference that, we obviously were looking for a head coach, not that we were told to exclude assistants, but thought, where we were, that we needed someone with head coaching experience. Looking for someone who'd had success on the offensive side of the ball. Just think that that's what the Gator Nation, wanted at this point in time. And, so over that 2-week period, we had a chance to vet coaches. And, as I said during the press conference when we introduced Jim, that we just kept checking boxes next to his name. He was a head coach. He had taken over a very difficult situation at Colorado State, 3-9 and 3-9 and 3-9. And 3 years later, he's 10-2. Certainly his success at Alabama had a huge factor in this conversation. In the 2 national championships, called plays, and national championship games. I mean, the last time we faced them as Gators, we were the #1 team in the country in Atlanta, and, you know, they put a pretty good whipping on us, and especially on the offensive side of the ball. I liked what he had done with quarterbacks. I talked to 2 quarterbacks that played for him, Greg McElwain and A.J. McCarron, and certainly his recruiting, experience here in the state of Florida. He's recruited here for Alabama. He recruited here for Michigan State. He recruited here for Louisville. And so all those things kept coming up in his favor. So, once, he kind of rose to the top, so to speak, we felt let's go try to get him. So it really wasn't trying to rush to get it done for recruiting. It was a benefit that we were able to get it done quickly because he came on board and he was recruiting almost immediately. So I think that will help us, but it wasn't like, hey, we have to get this done because of recruiting. I mean, we wanted to find the right person, and, certainly felt like that we have found the right person and, felt really good about it.
Absolutely.
Jeremy, there's no easy way to let someone go, and I know we've talked about this, and you've thought about it, but in my life I've never seen a smoother farewell than the one that Florida had with Will Muschamp. Talk a little bit about what went into that and how you felt going in.
Well, as I told you, Paul, it was very difficult. It was very emotional for a lot of us here because, candidly, we love Will Muschamp. We loved who he was as a person as much as anything else. Obviously, went through a lot of battles for the 4 years here. You guys know Will. He's as good a person as there is. Everybody around here loved working with him, for him, however it worked. And so I was very emotional. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, and I've said this to a lot of different people who asked me or made the same comment you just made, is that it's, the things went so well because of, the pro that Will Muschamp is. Will understood the decision. When I sat down with him the Sunday after South Carolina game, his comment was, Jeremy, I get it. We didn't win enough games. And, I'm sorry. And, you saw his press conference. He accepted full responsibility. He's accepted full responsibility for everything since day one. Every time we lose a game, he said it starts with him. Obviously when, we had the 4 and 8 years, no excuses, no pointing fingers, no this injury, that injury. That's on me. And he's an accountable individual. He's as professional as you come across. If you'd been in the team meeting that I was in, he spoke and then I spoke to them on that Sunday, and again, as professional as it got, and because as I said, he's a pro and he gets it. So I know the reason it went so smoothly is because there were strong emotions on both sides about the individual, and also you had a head coach who understood it, who may not have liked it. Certainly he worked his tail off to have different outcome, but he understood it. Never once argued, never once saying, how about this, another year of that, or if we could have done that. No. Jeremy, I didn't get it done. Jeremy, I didn't win enough games. Told his team that, in the game of life, we're all held accountable. That's what he told his team. And so the reason it went so well, Paul, and the reason it was smooth, if anything that difficult can be smooth, in my opinion, because of Will and who he is and how he is.
Jeremy, I know, you got Jim in, and have you had any sense of the rapport with the players, what kind of culture he's trying to bring, and do you see the response, or are you receiving the response for Jim from the players, what you expected? Because his opening press conference was one of the best I've ever seen, and you could tell a lot about his personality. Are the guys kind of starting to gravitate to that?
Yeah, I think they will. I think that's one reason we hired him. Again, I talked to, Greg McElwain, A.J. McCarron, and I read a lot of the comments. The internet helps you hire coaches sometimes when you're trying to find out information, and you can see how the players of Colorado State responded to him. But, it's a little early because, obviously we have a staff in place. DJ Durkin's coaching our team, and we have an existing staff in place, and I think Mac is being respectful of that. I've seen some of the athletes in the weight room, whatever have you, and there seems to be a positive vibe, and I'm very confident there will be a positive vibe. But I think also, Marcus, it's a little early because, Jim, in fact, I think Jim's first meeting with them, he says, folks, we'll visit more after the first year, but, you need to trust me and give me a chance to earn your trust. So, but he's also being very respectful of what we have in place now.
You mentioned the transition, and, Florida has a bowl game, and bowl games are a big part of the tone and tenor of a college program. But Jeremy, how difficult is it to play in a bowl game in a transition like this?
What's difficult about it, Paul, is, it's emotional. I've done it one time before, I guess in 2004 when we played in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. and Ron Zook, that's the Ron Zook transition, and Urban was coming in, and you'll be around some coaches and some families whose futures are uncertain. Obviously we've enjoyed working with them. I think, they've enjoyed working at the University of Florida, and, those days are coming to an end. So it's hard, and it's not acrimonious at all. It's just, it's hard because people who care about people. And so, yeah, there's no question. At the end of the day, what I've told my staff is that we want to treat these coaches in a first-class fashion because they've been pros here just as much as Will's been pros. So have they. They've coached this team. DJ's been a pro. They're going to get them ready to play a ball game. So I want to make sure them and their families can have as good a time as possible. And I want to do everything we can for them. And obviously, you want to do it for the players. Every time there's a coaching transition, coaches and families get caught in the middle and they've got to move on. But, players get caught in the middle too. They came to play here for Will Muschamp, and obviously, on January 4th or whatever it is, they're going to have a new coach and a new staff and, new direction and whatever have you, which isn't necessarily bad. But again, it's awkward for them as well. So there's no question. It's an awkward time, if that's the right word. It's not insurmountable, and nobody's going to be. We're going to put a good face on. We're going to have fun. We're going to try to win a football game. We're going to take care of our staff. We're going to take care of our players and make the best out of it. But it is an awkward and a difficult time just because it's an emotional time for everybody involved.
Jeremy, many thanks for your candor throughout this process, and best wishes during the holidays, and hope to see you soon.
Hey, thank you, Paul. Appreciate you guys. Marcus, happy holidays to you as well, and good luck to you all. Appreciate everything you do for the Southeastern Conference. You guys do a great job for us.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We welcome you back to the program. It's been a good one. Marcus Spears with me here in the studio. We opened chatting with Jeremy Foley. Later on, we'll check in with Urban Meyer. We're joined now by Jay Jacobs, the athletic director at Auburn. And Jay, thanks for the time, and so much to talk about. But first, I read your statement, and certainly Coach Malzahn's the other day with yet another tragedy in Auburn, and I'd like to start with that. It's been a very tough week, I'm sure.
It has been, Paul, and I hope you and Marcus are doing well, and thanks for having me on. To be in a town like Auburn and something like this happens, it is certainly tragic. And as you sit in that team room on Sunday afternoon and you're there with those players, and you got these guys that are 6'5", 300 pounds, crying and trying to cope with how does this happen. You begin to question a lot of things. What can we do better? And the facts are that Auburn's one of the safest campuses in the nation, and for something like this to happen, it just is shocking. And but we're working through it and making sure that we're there for our team and our other student athletes, and certainly there for Jaquel's family, Arlisha and Mario, his mom and dad. It's just tragic.
Jay, I know it's rough, man. I was playing for Dallas when we had a tragic incident happen, and I want to give the Auburn family my condolences, and especially to his parents. And not much of a question, but I just want to tell those players, and if you can relay the message, is that what they do on Saturday is so much more than football. And I hope those guys understand that and represent that. And, it's tough because I'm a former player and I've been in that seat and position before. And so more than a question, I just want to, encourage you guys and hopefully somehow, some way let those players know that when they play this bowl game, they represent so much more than football.
Well, I appreciate that, Marcus, and thank you, and I'll certainly do that. And we're gonna wear a decal on our helmet for Jaquel. Yeah. And back when I was playing in '83, we had a player die the first day of conditioning, Greg Pratt. It's just you remember that, Paul, and it leaves a mark on you the rest of your life. And can't imagine as a father having to get that phone call. My phone rang at 2:07 Sunday morning, and that is just tragic. And we're lifting them up. And one thing that I've learned is that my wife and I have been foster parents for a number of years, and people go through different things in life, and it has really helped me with the perspective here for our student athletes. You wonder, why this happened or why that happened, and people's backgrounds and upbringings are also different. And when something like this happens in the Auburn community, everybody has a lot of questions why. And those are good questions, but it really doesn't matter. Another young man has died here in the United States, and 18 years old, and it's just too soon and too young and just too tragic. And we have to cherish each day.
Absolutely.
And know that each day is, it's like the Bible says, it's a vapor. You know, it could be here today and gone tomorrow. But I appreciate y'all's condolences, and there'll be a memorial service this weekend. We'll all attend, but just got to continue to lift up his family and his team, his teammates.
And Jay, not to go back to 1983, but Greg Fred died getting ready for the season, and I remember being in New Orleans after the Sugar Bowl, and Coach Dye and so many of your coaches, you were on that team, talking about how he inspired the Auburn players to what was almost a national championship, in my opinion. A lot of people's opinion should have been, but that was a long time ago. But it's still a vivid memory, I'm sure, to many people.
It is, Paul, and it did inspire us. It was really a wow, and it goes back to what Marcus is saying, is that we look at these guys and they're big and they're physical, but they're kids. They're 18 to 22-year-old, trying to become grown men, and sometimes we throw them in that role. But the reality of it is that we're all growing and learning. And when you sit in that room on Sunday afternoon at 1:30, and you look in these guys' eyes and know how vulnerable they are, it changes the way you think. It changes the way you think about life. It changes about the decisions you make every day. And I think it helps once you begin to grieve. I think it helps in the learning process of that. You know what? Each day is a gift, and the opportunity to play this game, this little piece of life that really has nothing eternal to it, is an opportunity for me to go out there and do as good as I can possibly do. Not only for myself, but in the memory of an athlete, a friend that is no longer with us.
And Jay, I'm almost hesitant, but I will change the conversation to what was a really wonderful moment last weekend at Auburn before all this happened, and that was the introduction of Will Muschamp. Give us the backstory on how it came about.
Absolutely, Paul. When Gus made the change here, he came to me and he said, the first guy I want to talk to is Will Muschamp. And so Gus reached out to him, and they visited, and Will said that he had made a promise to his wife, Carol, to get out of town for a few days, so they did that. And then a head coaching position came available that Will was contacted about and got involved in, and he wanted to walk that out. And as soon as the timeline hit, that on his timeline, he had told us that he'd let us know by Friday. And when Friday hit, he called Gus and said, "I'm ready to come to Auburn." And it is a great addition for us here at Auburn. We've got to get our edge back on the defensive side, and Will is a great defensive mind, and he provides an edge to our defense that. Similar to what we have on offense, but we need it on defense, and so we're excited to have Will and Carol and Jackson and Whit, their two boys, here part of the Auburn family. It's exciting, and our players are excited about it. In the aftermath of something terrible, but we have to continue moving on. Just remember the family, but our players are excited about it. Will's excited to be here, and it's great to have him back here at Auburn.
I played for Will at LSU, and a phenomenal man and a phenomenal coach. What was the anticipation like waiting on that phone call? Because, he obviously was probably the top defensive coordinator, the current position he'll be in with you guys out there. And what was that process like? Was everything on hold until we find out from Will Muschamp, or were you guys still vetting other potential candidates?
Well, hey, Marcus, first of all, I want to know, did he ever headbutt you and draw blood?
That, and he pushed me and knocked the wind out of me.
He's not a real big guy, but he's pretty fiery, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Real fiery.
Well, yes, that's the way he was here. But we were waiting on him. That was after Gus visited with him, before he took a few days away with his wife. Gus was waiting on him. You know, obviously, you know, you have to have your ducks in a row. And fortunately, we're in a place with Gus as the head coach and where we are at Auburn right now is that we had several people interested in the job. So, and plus it's bowl season. The only thing that we were, that Gus wanted to make sure that we could get done if possible was have somebody on board by yesterday, which the junior college guys could sign. And but that really wasn't a pressure deal, Marcus. It was more of it would be nice if we could, but we were waiting on Will, and he's the only person we offered the job to. But we had some other people that are great coordinators, but Will was Gus's first choice, and I certainly am glad we got him.
And Jay, you obviously you had to make the decision, but once he was hired, the story said Will Muschamp, who was paid whatever $1.6 million or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Talk about that decision and what went into making Will Muschamp the highest paid assistant in the country. Well,
winning and winning the right way is important here at Auburn. And when Gus came to me and said, "This is the guy I want to hire," I said, "We're going to make it happen." And so, certainly other administrators were involved in that up the ladder, but everybody supported it 100%. And we knew that getting someone like Will in the market we're in, it's a big number, but we're willing to do that. Over the last 10 years, been able to put several $1 million in reserve and been good stewards of our funds. And we're going to do whatever's necessary within the rules and provide the best experience for our student athletes. We're going to hire the best coaches we possibly can. So, Paul, it wasn't a lot of discussion about it. It was, this is what I think it's going to take to get him, and it was approved, and we hired him.
And universal applause as a result.
Yeah. Jay, I got to tell you, too, thank you for the meal we had in Auburn.
Oh,
I still remember it, and it was absolutely amazing.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Marcus. Miss Eloise, she's something else of a cook. We had our athletic department Christmas open house Tuesday night, and Miss Eloise and her team came over, and we had food for about 200 athletic department employees. So, but I'll be sure to tell her.
Because I had to do the show, and I got to Jay's house late, and there was no food left, Marcus.
That would have been me. That would have been me.
Well, I was helping Marcus a little bit, Paul.
Yeah.
It was truly it was the first weekend of the season, and your hospitality, Jay, was quite appreciated by our crew.
Well,
anytime food involved, I'm appreciative, Jay.
Marcus, I am too. But then the fellowship was great too. We've all got tough jobs, and you guys are on the road all the time, and so we just wanted to have something there for you all, a little home cooked meal, and happy to do it, and look forward to do it again this next fall when you guys come to town. But I'll be sure to pass along, Marcus, to Miss Eloise how much you appreciate it, you as well, Paul. It was our pleasure having you in our home.
Absolutely.
Jay, Merry Christmas, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Hey, thank you, Paul and Marcus, both of you guys. Merry Christmas, and God bless, and y'all come to Auburn when you can, and thanks.
Same to you, Jay. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Jay Jacobs, well, it was a great night.
It was a great night.
Man. And, I mean, we're talking about a home-cooked meal.
Yes,
we're not talking about.
We're talking about sleep meals. When you leave, you almost fall asleep driving back to the hotel.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We welcome to our program Coach Urban Meyer, the head coach at Ohio State. Certainly 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be getting ready to play Alabama in the college football playoff. And Coach Meyer, thank you very much. Pleasure to visit with you again.
Yeah, good to talk to you, Paul.
Thank you. We were taping a show yesterday, and one of our compatriots was about to get on a plane to come see you, and I noticed that he arrived. How did it go with Tim Tebow last night and your team?
Oh, it was great. It was like a last-minute call, and he said, "Do you mind if I come in?" And Tim's always welcome here, and he came out and watched practice for a little bit. And I asked him, kind of spur the moment. I said, "Do you mind if you grab a minute with our team and just talk about the closeness and chemistry of some of the championship teams you've been a part of. And he was obviously the way he handles his business, he was great.
Yeah, I can only imagine. You've seen him a lot more than I have, but just watching the reaction of players everywhere we have been with him, it's pretty magical. Well, speaking of that, let's go back nearly 2 weeks. Everyone was speculating on what would happen, and I certainly have read the reports of what it was like at your house. How nervous were you when that announcement was being made?
Well, the one I can relate it to is in '06, where I remember we got home about 3 o'clock in the morning after we beat Arkansas in the SEC championship game, and I think it was I can't remember the exact. It was Harris polls and BCS polls and everything else, and I couldn't sleep. I went to my son's baseball practice, and I'm calling Jeremy Foley about every 4 minutes. What do you hear? What do you hear? And then he called me back and said, we're in. But you're not supposed to say anything for about 3 hours or 4 hours. And obviously that was hard to keep that by myself. But we actually did not know until the name flashed on the screen on the TV. So there was zero, I thought for sure someone would call us a couple minutes beforehand to let us know. But we found out when the world found out.
Yeah, we talked to Pete Thamel, who was at your house, and he said you kept turning up the television. Was that out of nerves, or you just didn't want to hear anyone else talk?
Yeah, too much chatter. When you get an athletic director's wife, my wife, and other people in the room, I guess they talk too much. So I had to turn it up.
Listen, a lot has been made. I mean, I know you were at the awards last week and sat down with the other coaches, and people can't help but talk about your past games with Nick Saban. It looked like, I'm not putting words in your mouth, you looked like you were a little weary of the conversation, but for the next 2 weeks it's unavoidable. Just is it tiresome, or is it just the reality of playing someone like Coach Saban in a game like this?
Well, it's, Coach, you put Coach Saban with a bunch of bad players, and it's not a very good team. So I always, I'd rather talk about players. Players win games. Coaches do the best they can to recruit them, develop them, and obviously he's a friend. He's one of the best out there, and we've had some great games. But I usually like to talk about something more important, like our defense, how they play, and how are they going to hold up against the best receiver in the country, and those type of things. I think that's much more important than a history between two coaches.
Yeah, that's fair, and I sense that watching the program last week. Coach Meyer, another question that you were asked a lot when you were battling, ironically, Michigan for that spot at the University of Florida was the comparisons between the two leagues. You can't get away from it. The SEC and the Big Ten are two of the biggest and the best of all time. You know both leagues, so how would you compare which you've gone through in an extraordinary fashion the last 3 seasons at Ohio State versus what goes on in this part of the country, which you did quite well at Florida?
Well, I think and it's not new news, but now that I've lived it, there was a time where in northeastern Ohio, where I'm from, in western PA, there'd be 40 Division I, high-end Division I athletes, and because of the population shift, where I'm from, it was about steel mills and coal and iron ore and the ships, and a lot of that industry's dried up. With that, a lot of jobs have dried up, and so you don't see you see great athletes, great players, just not the quantity that was there in the years ago, and the population shift has obviously occurred where Georgia high school football has exploded, and Florida high school football has always been great, but you just see the quantity is greater in the South, and as a result, I think the SEC is benefit from that. That doesn't mean that there's not great players and great teams up here, because there certainly are. But depth, top to bottom, that's where the difference is, and I think that's what's happened over the last few years.
In reading reports and in visiting with reporters up there, it sounds like you've not that Ohio State needs to close the gap. Ohio State is one of the blue chip programs in the nation, but your recruiting certainly has escalated since your arrival. Is that just broadening the base or what?
Well, there's been a good history of great players coming out of Florida and Georgia coming to play at Ohio State. I think maybe we have I'm not sure, more emphasis on it. I think, being down there for 6 years and having an incredible relationship with the high school programs down there, and So it's a concerted effort to tap into some of the most talent-rich areas of the country, not just Florida and Georgia, but also Texas, and we've had great success there the last few years.
Coach Meyer, I doubt seriously that you think about this, and I know Coach Saban does, and other coaches, they coach because they love to teach. Having said all that, it's hard to avoid the news of last night. It's only been reported that Michigan will offer Jim Harbaugh in the vicinity of $8 million a year. I'm guessing there's not going to be a lot of reaction on your end, but I figured I would try anyway.
I think you know the answer, and I just heard that news this morning, and I don't have any reaction.
Okay, Coach, I actually got more out of you than I thought, so I feel good. Well, maybe I spoke too soon. Coach, just in terms of between now and 2 weeks from now, what is the schedule for your program? I know Christmas is coming, so there'll obviously be a break, but how do you schedule what happens now between the time you get into New Orleans?
Well, we finished phase one, and phase one is also, like most schools, deal with finals and exams, and phase two is what we're currently in, and then we wrap that up on the 21st. And phase two is all about installing the game plan. And then it's real important. I've always promised myself and our team that if we can, we're going to send them home for Christmas. So we send them home on the 21st. They go home for Christmas. We all convene back here in Columbus, get 2 days of practice, and head down to New Orleans on the 27th and get into game week.
Coach, I know there's plenty to do. I appreciate your time. We'll see you down in New Orleans, and best wishes. It's always good to catch up.
Thanks, Paul, for having me on.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Manuel is in Austin. Hey, Manuel.
Hey, Paul. Hey, talking about John Harbaugh and how hard Michigan is going after him, you made a comment that we don't really know. How good John Harbaugh really is.
Well, first of all, it's Jim Harbaugh. John's coaches in Baltimore.
I'm getting confused. So, Jim, you almost got to put him up there right now. Even without a national championship in college, you got to almost put him up there with Nick Saban, maybe possibly even better than Nick Saban, don't you think?
What would you base that on?
Well, I mean,
other than the fact that you're a narrow-minded Texas fan.
He was successful at Stanford,
mm-hmm.
And I mean, let's face it, it's Stanford. It's not like it was a USC or Alabama or Texas or anything like that. Then, he took his talents to the NFL where he, to me, it's much harder to turn around an NFL team than it is a college team because you don't just get to replace bad players with good ones. You got to turn losers into winners. Is basically what he did with Alex Smith and Vernon Davis, Frank Gore. All those players were already there when he got there, and they couldn't win, but yet he turned them into winners. I mean, 3 straight NFC title games, 1 Super Bowl. They didn't win, but, I mean, Nick Saban wasn't exactly killing it in the NFL. That's the reason why he ended up back in college. I would say he's a better coach overall than Nick Saban. And if he got a chance at Michigan, I think.
Listen, man. How many titles did Jim win at Stanford?
Paul, I just said it's Stanford. It's not like it's Bama. He didn't win any.
Stanford's done pretty well.
Well,
over the years, you may have heard of them.
I've heard of them, but it's not Bama. It's not Texas. It's not USC. Pete Carroll. I would put Pete Carroll above Nick Saban.
At one time, I probably would have agreed with you. I mean, Pete Carroll has a pretty impressive resume.
Pretty impressive. I mean, if you measure him up to Nick Saban.
Manuel, we're talking about Pete Carroll. Jim Harbaugh has done what in his career to convince you that he's better than someone who 3-4 weeks from now may have his 5th national championship?
I just told you what he's done. I told you he.
No, you really haven't told me anything.
He was successful in college, and he's
how many titles has he won in the NFL?
Oh, are we measuring it by titles now?
I'm just asking you a question, Manuel. How many titles has he? How many Super Bowls has Harbaugh been in?
he didn't win any, but he wasn't a failure of epic proportions.
No, he's a very successful coach. I'm with you, but to me, you have to be judged by something. And losing to Seattle every year, or to someone else in the championship game, or he did lose I think he did lose a Super Bowl, didn't he? Yeah, he lost to his brother.
He lost to his brother. But no, in all fairness, I mean, he is playing against Pete Carroll, who, like I just said,
I'm not. And by the way, Nick Saban was not successful in his 2 years as an NFL coach in Miami.
He wasn't just not successful. He was horrific.
Well, I wouldn't say he was horrific. The first year he had a winning record. I think he was 9-7, and then the second year they were in the playoff contention. They lost the last 2 or 3 games, and he left. He was not fired though. I mean, they wanted him. Wayne Huizenga wanted him to stay. He was very disappointed when he left. Would he have been successful? No idea. Jimmy is in Chicago. Hey, Jimmy.
Hey, Paul. Well, talking about Saban going to Miami, it was also widely anticipated that the Dolphins were going to successfully complete a deal that would have brought Drew Brees to the Dolphins.
And Saban wanted Drew Brees, and he was overruled.
Exactly, and they ended up with Dante Culpepper, who had totally botched his rehab from a knee injury the season before, and basically he was stuck without a quarterback. So that was basically the story in Miami. But I wanted to weigh in a little bit on Barry Alvarez because, it's been kind of popular for a lot of people to take shots at him, but I think people don't realize that, first of all, 2 years ago when Bielema left out of the blue, the seniors came to Alvarez's office and asked him to coach that bowl game. And if you're Alvarez, you're the AD, and you've got the captains coming to your office of a senior class that had won more games in Wisconsin football history than any other class, if you say no, then you get blasted for just leaving the kids out to hang even more, and, he doesn't care about these guys. And then if he takes it and agrees to coach them and they lose the game, well, they lost because, Alvarez, took the job for that bowl game. But, and another thing that people forget is that, Stanford, that was a 12-2 Stanford team that had just knocked Oregon out of the BCS championship game by beating them in Eugene. And then this Wisconsin team, that was a team that was 8-5. And they wouldn't have gone to the Big Ten championship game had not Ohio State.
I forgot that. That's a really good point.
And then, 2 weeks ago when Anderson leaves out of the blue, same thing. And a lot of these seniors were on that team 2 years ago. And they say to Alvarez, would you coach us? And there's no question Alvarez would have done whatever they wanted. Hey, do you want the defensive coordinator to stay and be the coach, or whoever you want to be the coach? That would have been fine with him. But again, if you're Alvarez, you can't say no to the captains of a senior class that went to 3 Big Ten championship games, 2 Rose Bowls. Especially this Anderson thing was really shocking. And these kids grew up when Alvarez just rescued Wisconsin football from scratch. And he's an icon to them. And if Alvarez doesn't take it again, well, he's being selfish. He's just blowing these kids off. And then when he decides to coach them and he, agrees to the wishes of these seniors, well, all of a sudden he's being selfish. Am I missing something here, Paul?
I don't think you are, Jimmy. Hey, thanks for calling.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Rich is up next in Atlanta. Hey, Rich, good afternoon.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
And, hey, real quick, I like old Larry's suggestion about Danny. What a great kid. What a great guy. And I'm glad John just corrected you about the Liberty Bell, excuse me. Rocky ran up the art museum steps, but that's all good. Hey, Paul, regarding Muschamp, you made a good comment about Tuscaloosa not necessarily being concerned about him, and I agree with that, but I think the one concern would be in the area of recruiting, right? Wouldn't that be a concern?
What would be in the area recruiting?
Yeah, but the Muschamp hire.
Oh, yeah, there's no question that he gives Auburn energy.
Right. So when you said that there's no concern, and I agree with that from a, I hate to use the word schematic standpoint.
I was talking
about.
I was talking more on the field that there wasn't concern. But listen, I don't think Alabama though is concerned about anyone in recruiting. I mean that sincerely, Rich. They recruit against the entire country. This isn't about Auburn. They've been challenged when Chiswick got there. I remember talking to Kirby Smart one day we were together, and he said they are coming after us like you wouldn't believe. So Auburn has always been relentless in recruiting. That has nothing to that's not changing under Will Muschamp.
Right. Now, regarding Alabama, Paul, quarterbacks, very quickly, Coker coming back. What, in your opinion, what does that do for Cornwell and then possibly the kid that they signed in California, Barnett? Is this like stacking planes up at Hartsfield? Right?
Yeah, I think so, Rich. I mean, listen, I'm beyond trying to handicap the Alabama quarterback situation, considering what a poor job I did last year.
Well, no, it was always I don't know if it's a legitimate concern, but it was an issue in the Saban era. If there was one thing that people could say was the lack of the development of the backup quarterback. I mean, that was obviously a big thing before this season. But now that this season has played out, Coker coming back, you mentioned Alec Morris the other day, which is another highly recruited quarterback. He's still on the roster. I was just wondering if you'd see any.
I mean, my answer, Rich, is I don't have. I mean, I'm not being flippant. I just don't have the faintest idea what's going to happen there because it's fairly difficult to guess after what happened last year with Blake Sims.
Right. These kids are highly recruited. They all want to play. Cornwell comes from, I believe, Norman, Oklahoma, of all places. Mm-hmm. Barnett's from California. You know that they want to play, and that position, unfortunately, is not a rotational position like all their, running backs, defensive tackles, whatever. So I was just wondering your thoughts on that.
Thank you very much, Rich. Appreciate the call. Let's continue with Sean in Philadelphia. How are you, Sean?
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Just to make a comment on a subject that I think is overlooked a lot regarding Urban Meyer. Cam Newton. I read an article once about when they were recruiting Tim Tebow, and he almost went to Alabama, apparently, really close. And Dan Mullen said to Urban Meyer, if we lose this kid, it's going to set us back, something like 5 years, I think I read, or something crazy like that. And, Urban Meyer just looked at him and said, I don't want to talk about that,
The situation with Tebow, Tebow wanted to go to Alabama. I mean, I will say that, covering the story at the time and knowing Tim, I think in his heart of hearts he desperately wanted to go to Alabama because he was really transfixed by Mike Shula, the head coach there. That's who he wanted to play for. But Urban kept fighting, and Tebow's family were all Gators. And at the end, I think the emotion of growing up a Gator fan, having Gators everywhere in his house, overwhelmed him. But he told me that he called Urban I can't remember if he called Shula first, or I think he called Shula, then he called Urban, and he almost changed his mind after he told Urban that he was going there. It was that close.
Yeah, I mean, one could argue, though, that team, they had Cam Newton, they might have just kept rolling. I mean,
yeah, I mean, that's always hard to say. I mean, by the way, Cam would have never made it there. Urban didn't care for Cam. He really couldn't stomach Cam's immaturity, and I don't know how Cam would have survived there. Now, it didn't help Cam that Tebow was well positioned, but you remember, I mean, Tebow showed up after Chris Leak was there, and Chris Leak was the number one player in the entire country.
Right. Yeah, I give the guy a lot of credit, especially in today's day and age, how coaches handle some situations, Florida State, for example. And, he didn't take it. He got him off the team, and, the guy obviously turned out to be a pretty good player, and Think they would have
nobody
lost that
knew
with
it
him.
though. I mean,
And now-
I've talked to Urban about Cam before, and I mean, no one realized what he was. He was just. I mean, he had raw talent, but he didn't have any discipline at all. Jeff is next in Washington. Hey, Jeff.
Paul, it's really good to speak to you. Enjoying the show as always.
You bet.
Two quick things I've got to sort of get off my chest. Just one note on the Tebow interviewing Urban Meyer discussion you had before. I think most of what you said all of what you said is right, and probably should put the issue to bed. But keep in mind also that one of the reasons why Tim Tebow is valuable to his network is the ability to call up a Big Ten guy, the most prominent Big Ten coach, certainly at the moment, and get him to do an interview with the SEC network. And if you're going to continue to have those contacts, you got to do simple favors like talk to the guy's team while you're in town.
Let me assure you, Tim Tebow talking to Ohio State had nothing to do with anything else. That's just something that when Tim goes places, he's asked to do it, and he's with Urban, he's closer to Urban than any other coach in America. So it's not that big a deal. I mean, I can understand perceptively why someone might be upset, but by the way, Tim Tebow doesn't need anything. I mean, he's not like you and me. That I mean, we work for a living. I mean, Tim's doing this because he's enjoying it.
Right. He has what you call long-term job security, no matter where he goes.
No doubt.
I'm curious about some of the comments that you've made about Lane Kiffin and his future.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that the Alabama offense has looked good this year. I think if you look back over the last 10 years, that would be the rule, not the exception. Which is to say that Lane didn't break a finely tuned machine with high quality athletes under the best coach in college football. He's had 3 head coaching positions, and he's failed at each one. In some cases, spectacularly. And in ways
the only thing, let me just say one thing, Jeff. I would agree with 2/3 of what you said. And by the way, you're talking about someone who excoriated Lane Kiffin last year in front of 2.5 million people on game day, and he got fired the next day. So you're not. I wasn't president of the Lane Kiffin fan club, but I think that he failed at Tennessee in the way he left. I think he was actually getting Tennessee to a better place. So I think that's a gray area. But I'll grant you, Oakland was a disaster, and we all know about SC.
I agree entirely with what you said. In fact, I actually think that the Tennessee issue is a greater one to overcome because it has more to do with his character than his coaching ability. And you can learn to coach better, but at 35 you are who you are, I think.
But, Jeff, let me ask you this, though. And I was with you on all of that. But when you're the head coach at Tennessee, you've been there a year. It's a struggle. It's a transition. And suddenly you get called after Pete Carroll leaves to go to Southern Cal. What are you supposed to do?
Well, listen. I understand the attraction. I understand where you're going. But when you're engaged to your wife and a beautiful girl walks in, the answer is you're engaged. You have made a commitment.
No, there's no question you are. But I mean, basically, he was under contract. He got out of the contract. He was able to leave, and I blame Tennessee as well because they handled it extremely poorly. Now, by the way, I've never blamed Lane for not speaking to his team. I mean, I promise you, if you were head coach of a program and you left and the reaction was as negative and as visceral as that, you're smart to get out of town and never go back. Not let me meet with my team and do the right thing. There's too much volatility there. But in the end, he paid for that. And I'm not saying that Lane Kiffin is going to be the next coach at a major school. I'm just saying that when you compare where he was a year ago to tonight, he's come a long way.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN Radio app.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.